And Moshe said, Hear, O Yisrael, Yahweh your Elohim, Yahweh is one, and you shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, with all your being, with all your might. And these words which I'm commanding you today shall be in your heart, and you shall impress them upon your children, and shall speak of them when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way, when you lie down and when you rise up, and shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes, and you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Chag Sameach, everyone. Chag Sameach to everyone worshiping with us at home. This is the last day of the Festival of Unleavened Bread, Chag Matzah, and it's a blessing to be here, amen. And I'm looking forward to giving this message today. I think it's got a lot to do with some of the things we talked about earlier in the week and with unleavened, and you'll see what I'm talking about as I go along. And the name of the message is called "Which Ass is Right?" Yeah. Now listen, before we go any further, Ron used to read the King James a lot. All right. Well, what's a donkey referred to? Okay. Just want to make sure everybody knows what we're talking about. I want to make sure everybody knows what we're talking about. All right. Now, once upon a time, there were two donkeys. Now listen, that's how you know. That's how you know about this story, all right? Once upon a time, there were two donkeys walking around the pasture, and as they walked about, they came upon two buckets. One bucket was measured halfway with water, and the other was measured halfway with feed. Now, they both thought this was quite interesting, and in donkey talk, as they began to talk about this, they at first started to converse. One said, "This is a curious thing. Why would someone leave behind these buckets, one half full of water and the other half empty with feed?" The other donkey said, "I too find this curious thing, but you are clearly mistaken, my friend, because the bucket with the water is the half empty one, and the one with the feed is half full. Besides, they've not been left here, but rather, instead, they are in the process of being relocated." And that's what's going on with these buckets. The conversation quickly escalated into an argument between the two, and the first said, "You know, anybody with a brain the size of a chicken's can see that one bucket is half full of water and the other half empty with feed, and that it has been left. How can you be so blind?" The second said, "Me blind? It takes someone with the discernment of a pig to come to the conclusion like that. The bucket with the water is a half empty one, and it's the bucket with the feed that is full, and they are in transit to another destination. Can't you see the footprints coming from the barn?" "Oh, I see the footprints all right. But I've also seen the evidence that says this is a plot by the rulers to manipulate the animals." Anyone with an eye to see can clearly see that these footprints were made by someone walking backwards. So they do not lead away from the barn, but rather lead to the barn. And they are inside, watching us perhaps, possibly planning on slaughtering us. The second donkey said, "Donkeys aren't raised for slaughtering." To which the first said, "Aha, see, it's what they want you to think." Then the second said, "You, sir, are a disgrace to donkeys everywhere. You are a dumb ass." To which the first said, "And you, sir, are clearly a stupid ass." as the dispute escalated more and more, it became more and more personal. All of the animals in the barnyard looked on as these two asses began to rear up and backbite one another and smite one another and bray loudly at one another. Oh, oh, oh. Ee-oh, ee-oh. Now, the reason I can do that so well is because I've been there. I've been there. The other animals looked on and they were trying to figure it all out. Which one of these two asses is right? They asked. Some thought the first and some thought the second. But they agreed that it was hard to tell because they mostly saw just a couple of braying asses. And finally, a lamb walked over and asked what the big dispute was about. Because you can hear this all over the whole farm. The first said, "This dumb ass cannot see that one bucket is half full of water while the other is half empty with feed and that it has been left." To which the second chided in, "He is such a stupid ass that he can't see that the bucket of water is half empty and it is the bucket of feed that is half full and that it is in transit. If he weren't so stupid, there would be no dispute." To which the first said, "The same would be true if he weren't so dumb." The lamb looked and he evaluated the situation and said, "I'm not going to get into this dispute because we're all neighbors here. But to me, I see two buckets and both are full." The two donkeys looked at each other and they both were kind of in agreement that the lamb could not be so naive. One is full of water and air, and the other is full of feed and air. Isn't it great that Yahweh has provided us with food to eat, water to drink, air to breathe, and a barn to give us shelter? And we should praise Yahweh for all that we have. The other animals thought this was an awesome understanding. The two asses, however, agreed that the lamb was being judgmental and self-righteous. And feeling annoyed at his proposition, they turned their backs, walked away, and carried on with their dispute. So, I'll ask you today, which one of the two asses was right? Well, it's sort of hard to tell, isn't it? You know, when you're looking at it from the ass's point of view. All right, so next I'll ask you this. In the grand scheme of things, was it really all that important, or was it just an exercise of pride? And the next I'll ask you this. Who acted righteously? The lamb. Because he was not concerned with that which did not matter, but rather thanked Elohim and gave Yahweh the esteem for the things that are really important. Amen? And I can tell you this, neither of these two asses acted righteously. And they even despised the righteous one when he came along. Now, can you think of anything in real life which reminds you of this story? I heard one thing come out of the back there. thanks to social media, we see a lot of stuff all the time, right? And I'm probably going to step on some hooves with this message. Why? Because there are some people who, like these two donkeys, become so passionate about being right that they throw righteousness right out the window. All right? And proving themselves right about things that don't even matter, that's what becomes so important. All right? Supposed Torah keepers are angrily disputing things like, everybody's sitting down, aren't they? Is gravity real? Is gravity real? Now, I don't know. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't know, but I do know what happens when you fall off the roof. It hurts. And that's really important to me. That's really important. That's what's important. That's what's important. Okay? Are aliens real? I'm not talking about the ones coming across the border. I'm talking about, yeah, no. All right. Have we been to the moon? NASA is lying to all of us. Is the earth flat or is it round? And they are so intent on tearing down anyone who ascribes to a different opinion that they do not look like a taught one of Messiah, but rather they look like braying asses, like these donkeys. And I'll likely step on some hooves today. Okay, well now, I've got to ask this question, just on this particular thing. What difference does it make to someone who's interested, actually even if you're not interested in keeping the Torah, what difference does it make if the earth is round or flat? It doesn't make any difference if the earth is round or if it's flat. Does it change even a day when seed time is? And when harvest time is? Does it change even one iota how we keep the Torah? Does it change how many diapers that you have to change in a day? Nope. Yeah, you can throw them over the edge or Does it change how far Walmart is from your house, or how much you get paid each week, or even this? The planes, they say that the planes fly up this way across the oceans and back down this way because it's a shorter distance than going across the circumference of the earth where the earth is at that point over the ocean. It's a shorter distance. Now you know what? Whether the earth's flat or whether they're lying to us, it does not matter, that they're still going to fly that way, and it's going to cost you the same amount of money for your plane ticket, and it's going to take that amount of time, and there is nothing that you can do about it. No matter how much you get on Facebook and fuss, none of it, you know. One sad thing about it is that it is usually, here's where it's going to come on showing hooves. It's a distraction from Hashatan, y'all. It is a distraction from Hashatan to draw you away from the path of life and to cause division amongst the brethren. Because you know what? I'm sitting there looking at brethren just ripping each other apart on this kind of stuff, and I'm like, really? How many people are you feeding that need feeding today, or clothing the naked, or visiting in the prison, because of this, all right? And if all Satan has to do is something like this to get you to believe that everything that you know is a lie, then he can get you to question everything, even Yahweh and Yahshua. Yeah. And he'll have a great day at the office. He'll have a great day at the office. We talked about this in the message a couple of weeks ago called Truth or Consequences. You remember that? And one of the things we talked about was Satan loves playing tricks on people and then sitting back and enjoying the show as we have to pay the consequences. All right? Now, why am I talking about this on the last day of unleavened? Because we discussed in a message the other day that leaven is like unrighteous attitudes, and it leavens the whole lump, and we need to get control of some of these attitudes of bitterness, which are keeping many of us from keeping the Torah. Okay? Well, like what? Well, let's turn to Mark chapter 28. I'm sorry, Mark chapter 12. There's not a Mark 12. I know. It's like Acts 29, isn't it? Mark chapter 12. What kind of Torah are we not keeping? Verse 28. Mark 12. And verse 28. And one of the scribes coming near, hearing them reasoning together, knowing that he had answered them well, asked him, which is the first command of all? And Yahshua answered him, the first of all the commands is, Hear, O Yisrael, Yahweh our Elohim, Yahweh is one, and you shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, with all your being, with all your mind, with all your strength. This is the first command, and the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no greater command than these. And the scribe said to him, Well said, teacher, you have spoken the truth. For there is one Elohim, and there is no other besides him. And to love him with all your heart and with all your understanding, with all your being, with all your strength, and to love one's neighbor as oneself is more important than all the burnt offerings and offerings. And look what Yahshua said to him after he answered him that way. When Yahshua saw that he answered wisely, he said to him, You are not far from the reign of Elohim. And after that, no one was bold enough to ask him, to question him. How would you like for Yahshua to tell you, You're not far from the reign of Elohim? You're not far from the reign of Elohim. You're not far. You're not there. You're not there, but you're on the right path. All right, you're on the right path. You know? Well, that's a lot better than you're on the wrong track. All right? All right. Now, let's see where this passage comes from. I want you to see what's right there with it. Leviticus chapter 19. YHWH chapter 19. We're going to be on page, we're going to be on page 125. We're going to start reading close to 17. Everybody there? It's going to be 17 though. Leviticus 19:17. Do not hate your brother in your heart. Now I got to ask you a question. Does some of this stuff that you see going around about some of these things sound like hatred in the heart for their brothers? Do they not name call like those two donkeys? Do they not backbite and quarrel and call each other names and just, you know?
Back up to 16 if you can.
Back up to 16. I can back up to 16. Do not go slandering among your people. Do not stand against the blood of your neighbor. I am Yahweh. Do not hate your brother in your heart. See, those go together. It says, reprove your neighbor for certain and bear no sin because of him. That doesn't mean because he's got an opinion about something that doesn't matter. We're talking about here if there's a transgression, you know. And reprove doesn't mean bitterly, caustically, abrasively just chew him up. That's not what reprove means. It means go to him in love and speak with him about transgression. Right? But look at this one. Do not take vengeance or bear a grudge against the children of your people, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am Yahweh. Now, that's what's right there in the same place where YHWH was saying the second great command in the Torah is. All this stuff right here is about loving your neighbor as yourself. I'm sure all of us have got involved in something before and said something that we shouldn't have. But it seems like lately, over the last year, it's just escalating. And it shouldn't be this way. It should not be this way in the Torah community. It should not. I think gravity's real. I don't think gravity's real. I think I don't know what they say. You know, Robert, what the center of the earth is full of water. No, it's the center of the earth is full of molten rock. And it just, all. You know what? That one don't matter either. I mean, it may affect your understanding of how the springs of water broke forth, in Genesis. But as far as, what time the kids have got to be in bed, that's it. It does not mean you're not redeemed. That's right. Now, let's look at James chapter 1. Joey, that was a good one for James chapter 1. We're going to start reading in verse 13. That was a good one for you to bring up, though, Joey, about the slandering, because see, that starts to happen. Once upon a time, I'd get involved in some of these debates and disputes and everything. You would be surprised how much more peace you have in your life. And you know what? Everybody's phones are synced up to their accounts and all that. Your phone don't blow up. I don't need that going on. Life's a lot better. James chapter 1, verse 13. Let no one say when he is enticed, I'm enticed by Elohim, for Elohim is not enticed by evil matters, and he entices no one. But each one is enticed when he's, what are those next two words? Drawn away by his own desires and trapped. And when desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And sin, when it has been accomplished, it brings forth death. If I'm out there just wearing out my brother because I'm venting my spleen on social media because I'm worried about whatever, the aliens, And something else too. Can you imagine how much better things might be if the hours spent poured over this stuff was spent poured over this stuff? Huh? It is futility. Huh? It's futility and feeding on wind. Read Ecclesiastes. Okay. Verse 16. Do not go astray, my beloved brothers. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no change, nor shadow of turning. Having proposed it, he brought us forth by the word of truth for us to be a kind of first fruits of his creatures. So then, my beloved brothers, let every man be swift to hear, and slow to speak, and slow to wrath. For the wrath of man does not work the righteousness of what? Do you see that? The wrath of man does not work the righteousness of Elohim. I don't care if you say in Yahshua's name after you get through spitting them out. It don't. Therefore, put away all filthiness and overflow of evil. From the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And receive with meekness the implanted word, which is able to save your lives, and become doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. Because if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he's like a man who looks at his natural face in a mirror. For he looks at himself and goes away and immediately forgets what he was like. But he that looked into the perfect Torah, that of freedom, and continues in it, not becoming a hearer that forgets, but a doer of work, this one shall be blessed in his doing of the Torah. If anyone among you thinks he is religious and does not bridle his tongue, that's kind of funny when we're talking about donkeys, isn't it? And does not bridle his tongue, but deceives his own heart, this one's religion is worthless. Clean and undefiled religion before Elohim and the Father is this, to visit orphans and widows in their affliction and keep oneself unstained from the world. You realize that overwhelmingly all the stuff that they're fighting about is worldly stuff? It's stuff that's come out of the world. It's stuff that's come out of the world. James chapter 4, we'll start reading in verse 1. Where do fightings and strivings come from among you? Do they not come from your pleasures that battle in your members? You desire and do not have. You murder and are jealous and are unable to obtain. You strive and fight, and you do not possess because you do not ask. Sounds like James was dealing with this in the first century, doesn't it? You ask and do not receive because you ask evilly in order to spend it on your pleasures. Adulterers and adulteresses, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with Elohim? Whoever therefore intends to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of Elohim. Or do you think the Scripture speaks to no purpose? Does the Spirit which dwells in us intensely crave unto envy? He who gives greater favor, but he gives greater favor because of this, he says, Elohim resists who? The proud, but gives favor to who? The humble. So then, subject yourselves to Elohim, resist the devil and he shall flee from you. Draw near to Elohim and he shall draw near to you. That's better than being drawn away, amen? Cleanse hands, sinners, and cleanse the hearts, you double-minded. Lament and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned to mourning and your joy to dejection. Humble yourselves in the sight of the Master. Kind of like that tax collector we were talking about earlier. You know, beating his breast. Humble yourselves in the sight of the Master, and he shall lift you up. Brothers, do not speak against one another. He that speaks against a brother and judges his brother speaks against Torah and judges Torah. And if you judge Torah, you are not a doer of Torah, but a judge. There is one lawgiver and judge who is able to save and to destroy. Who are you to judge another? Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow, let us go to such and such city, spend a year there and trade and make a profit, when you do not know of tomorrow. For what is your life? For it is a vapor that appears for a little and then disappears, instead of you saying, if the Master desires, we shall live and do this or that. But now you boast in your proud speeches. All such boasting is wicked. To him then who knows to do good and does not do it, to him it is sin. That's one of the reasons why we need to have love and compassion towards one another, because we know that it is sin for us not to have compassion and love for one another. Amen? We know that. So when we know that and we're just bitter and ugly to one another, we know that, and it's sin. I wanted to look at 2 or 3 Proverbs here for a minute. Proverbs chapter 16. Going to be on page 741. We're going to start reading in verse 5. Proverbs 16, verse 5. Everyone proud in heart is what? An abomination to who? To Yahweh. Hand to hand he does not go unpunished. Listen. That ought to be enough right there to tell you to know to do good and do it. You know? That ought to be enough right there. Verse 18. Before destruction comes pride, and before a fall, a haughty spirit. Better to be lowly in spirit with the poor than divide the spoil with the proud. He who acts wisely concerning the word finds good, and blessed is he who trusts in Yahweh. You know, there's a lot to be said for humility. Let's look at Proverbs 22. I'll start reading in verse 24. Proverbs 22 and verse 24. Make no friendship with one given to wrath. Have you ever known a person who is quick-tempered, flies off the handle at the drop of a hat? Don't put your hand up. Yeah. I'm asking if you know somebody, not if it's you. Yeah. All right, look what it says. Make no friendship with one given to wrath. See, there are some people who like being angry. They get a charge out of it. It makes them feel powerful, I presume. You know? Make no friendship with one given to wrath, and do not go with a man of rage, lest you learn his ways and find yourself ensnared. Do you see that? Yahweh does not want us to learn to be angry. You know? And a lot of this stuff is going on. It's like they're just they're just exercising those angry muscles. Getting big ones. Working them out. Need to let them rest a little bit. Actually, need to let them atrophy. All right. And Proverbs 15, verse 17. Proverbs 15, verse 17. Better is a meal of vegetables where love is than a fatted calf with hatred. A man of wrath stirs up strife, but he who is a patient appeases strife. It seems like even back here, you know, Yahweh wants us to be showing love to one another. I mean, all right. You know, turn with me over to John chapter 13 just a second. John 13, we're going to be starting at verse 34. We're on page 1037 in the 98 ISR. And it says, this is Yahshua speaking, a renewed command I give to you that you love one another. As I have loved you, that you also love one another. Watch this. By this, all know that you are my taught ones if you have love for one another. Okay, so then I have to come back and ask this. Do we look like one of Yahshua's taught ones if we're out there just blistering the daylights out of somebody that, you know, we just have a different opinion of, especially regarding stuff that don't matter? You know, we were talking earlier about, you know, what does it mean to cut people off or whatnot. I don't think that's a problem for a lot of folks. They'll cut folks off long before they get to whatever's written in the Torah.
That's true.
You know? Huh? They cut themselves off. But they got this unfriend button, don't they, Robert? Yeah. Now listen, I'm not talking about you drop your standards of righteousness down so everything goes. I'm not talking about that. I'm not, you know, we read on Sabbath that Yahweh said it is righteousness for us when we guard to do all that He commands. But you know, when we're talking about these things here, again, I keep coming back to talking about things that don't matter. And even if they are things that do matter, you know what? If you're not careful, the rest of the barnyard sitting over there watching you and the other one, and they can't tell which one's right. You know, because what the other thing that they can't tell is that you are a taught one of Yahshua, because according to this it says by this all will know that you are my taught ones if you have love for one another. That ain't love, brothers and sisters. It just isn't love. Now, before I forget it, one of the things where I think people, now there's going to be folks that disagree with me on this. They can unfriend me. There are some things that folks get in bitter disputes about that are scriptural things. And some might even believe that because they're understanding, they are so correct in their understanding that it is a salvational issue, right? I'm hoping that Yahweh is going to have some mercy on all of us because of things that we may not get right here in the dispersion thousands of years later trying to learn through a translation. All right? Yeah, we ask Him to impress things on our spirit, but what happens when one person says, well, I'm impressed this way, and another person says, I'm impressed that way? Because that happens too. That happens too. But let's take, for instance, calendar issues. Except for the strange case that might be out there, nobody is on a different calendar because they want to be in high-handed rebellion against Yahweh. It's the other way around. They are doing what they believe to be right in order to honor Him. They're not doing this for the wrong reason, and we need to extend people mercy because I got to tell you, we think we're doing what we think that what we're doing is right to the best of our understanding. But what if it's not? Now, and we're supposed to show up on certain high days, etc. And not showing up on certain times is cutting off a fence. And that's why I'm saying need to hope that Yahweh is going to have some mercy on us, because He knows that if we knew it was this day instead of that day, we'd be there on this day instead of that day. Amen. The pronunciation of the name. Because it says, whoever calls on the name of YHWH shall be delivered. Or is it YHWH? Or is it YHWH? You see? You see? And so, you'll have this group over here that says His name is Yahweh, and if you call Him anything else, yeah, you're cut off. You're in transgression. Got the same thing over here with the Yahuwah people, or the Jehovah people, or the Yahweh people, or the Yahuwah. Yeah. All right. So here's the thing, and I think Jeff Benner got a good point on this, and he says until we get Moshe's iPod or his cassette recorder, providing they haven't been compromised, we will likely never know with 100% certainty what the correct pronunciation of the name is until it is spoken for us to hear in our ear. And did you know what? If it's Yahweh, I'm sure the Yahuwah or the Yahweh or the Yahweh or the Jehovah people will all start saying, "Praise Yahweh." And if it's Yahweh, well, then we'll all be saying that. Amen. All right. So there's some things that we need to extend some people some love. All right. But Matthew chapter 7. We're going to start reading in verse 1. And when we read this here, it's going to start talking about do not judge lest you be judged. And I'm confident that Yahshua is not talking about not discerning righteous from unrighteous behavior. All right? He's not talking about that. He's talking, and he's not because, well, I'll get to it. Verse 1. Do not judge lest you be judged, for with what judgment you use, you shall be judged. And with the same measure you use, it shall be measured to you. I'm confident if we're in high-handed rebellion, but we don't judge other people that are in high-handed rebellion, when we get before the judgment seat, Yahweh's not going to say, "Well done, my good and faithful servant. You didn't judge anyone, neither do I judge you. Welcome in, to the treasure of your Father." That's not what's going to happen at the judgment. I'm confident that what this is talking about is Yahshua is telling us, not just like what we're talking about on social media here, is being judgmental towards one another, because you see, with the judgment that you judge other people, when you stumble and fall, you get held to that standard, and people judge that. If you on the other hand are a merciful person and cut people slack, and not be so ugly like what we're talking about when you stumble, because all of sin falls short of the esteem of Elohim, and we'll do it again. All right, we'll do it again. Then you're more likely to get mercy from others. Anyway, reading right along. And why do you look at the splinter in your brother's eye, but do not notice the plank in your own eye? Or how is it that you say to your brother, let me remove the splinter out of your eye, and see, a plank is in your own eye? Hypocrite, first remove the plank from your own eye, and then you shall see clearly to remove the splinter from your brother's eye. This goes back to what I was saying a while ago. This tells you right here that if you get the splinter out, you get the plank out of your eye, then you can help your brother get the splinter out, but not before. All right, not before. All right. Do not give what is set apart to the dogs, nor throw your pearls before pigs, lest they trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. Ask, and it shall be given to you. Seek, and you shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks it shall be opened. Or is there a man among you who, if his son asks for bread, shall give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, shall give him a snake? If you then, being wicked, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more shall your Father who is in the heavens give what is good to those who ask him? Therefore, whatever you wish men to do to you, do also to them. For this is the Torah and the prophets. Boy, there's a lot of that's not going on. Some folks will just blister the world, and when somebody says something back to them, they're just offended. They are just so offended. Enter, verse 13, through the narrow gate, because the gate is wide and the way is broad that leads to destruction, and there are many who enter through it. Because the gate is narrow and the way is hard pressed, which leads to life, and there are few who find it. But beware of false prophets. This is another place right here that we know that he's not talking about don't judge between righteousness and unrighteousness. Beware of the false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are savage wolves. By their fruits you shall know them. Are grapes gathered from thorn bushes, or figs from thistles? So every good tree yields good fruit, but a rotten tree yields wicked fruit, and a good tree is unable to yield wicked fruit, and a rotten tree to yield good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. So then, by their fruits you shall know them. And not everyone who says to me, Master, Master, shall enter into the reigns of the heavens, but he who is doing the desire of my Father in the heavens. Many shall say to me in that day, Master, Master, have we not prophesied in your name and cast out demons in your name and done many mighty works in your name? And then I shall declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who work lawlessness. Don't you think that keeping the second great command would be necessary for a lawful one? Let that one sink in a minute. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and does them shall be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain came down, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, and it did not fall, for it was founded on the rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them shall be like a foolish man. Now, you remember when we were talking about stop getting wisdom a few weeks ago? Remember, wisdom is what we do when we act righteously, and foolishness is what the fools do that is unrighteous. All right? And he's telling us right here, one man's wise and one man's foolish, and he is therefore acting unrighteously. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them, see, there's doing the unrighteousness, shall be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand, and the rain came down, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and they beat on that house, and it fell, and great was its fall. And it came to be when Yahshua had ended these words that the people were astonished at his teachings, for he was teaching them as one possessing authority and not as the scribes. Now I will tell you this. I will likely never, ever, ever go up in a craft high enough to see if the earth is curved. I probably won't. I can't imagine, that's not on my bucket list. All right? And I will likely never find myself in a boat or whatever you need to ride on to go out there and see the edge so that I can see if the earth's flat. That's not on my bucket list either. Huh? I said if, to see if it's flat. I said before to see the curve of the earth too. All right. But Pat, since you bring that up, the next point is that all of this stuff is a distraction. All of this stuff is a distraction to keep you focused and worrying about things that you can't do anything about. You can't do anything about it. I mean, I see a lot of stuff about chemtrails, all right? And it might be real, but I hadn't seen anybody doing anything about it except complaining, you know? So, and covering their mouths like Pat's doing right now. All right. All of this stuff is just a distraction to keep you focused and worrying about things that you can't do anything about. And in the grand scheme of things, it does not even affect you. It does not even affect you. Matthew chapter 6. We're right there. We're going to start reading at verse 21. Matthew 6:21. For where your treasure is, there your heart shall also be. Hey, what if your treasure is is self-esteem? Be like that Pharisee saying, "Oh Elohim, I thank you that you didn't make me like these dweebs that believe that the earth's this way," or you know. What if your treasure is your self-esteem? For where your treasure is, there your heart shall be also. The lamp of the body is the eye. If therefore your eye is good, all your body shall be enlightened. But if your eye is evil, all your body shall be darkened. If then the light that is within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? No one is able to serve two masters, for either he shall hate one and love the other, or else he shall cleave to one and despise the other. You're not able to serve Elohim and Mammon. Because of this I say to you, look at here, do not worry about your life, what you shall eat or drink, or about your body, or what you shall put on. Is not life more than the food, and the body more than the clothing? Look at the birds of the heavens, for they neither sow nor reap, nor gather into storehouses, yet your heavenly Father does feed them. Are you not worth more than they? And which of you by worrying is able to add 1 cubit of his life's span? So, why do you worry about clothing? I think clothing's probably even more important than some of this other stuff. You know? Yahshua's time. Don't worry about your clothing. Note well the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. And I say to you that even Shlomo in all his esteem was not dressed like one of these. But if Elohim so clothes the grass of the field, which exists today and tomorrow is thrown into furnaces, how much more you, O you of little belief? Do not worry then, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For all these the Gentiles seek for, and your heavenly Father knows that you need all of these. And look at this, what Yahshua says to us. But seek first the reign of Elohim and what? His righteousness. And all these matters shall be added to you. Do not then worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow shall have its own worries. Each day has enough evil of its own. Why would you want to bring more in? Oh, man. You know. So, here we are on the last day of unleavened bread. And we have been spending all week eating unleavened bread and hopefully thinking about Yahweh bringing Yisrael out of Mitzrayim. But also, I've taken opportunities to thank Elohim for taking me out of some of the unclean places where I've dwelt before. Amen? Can you relate? You know, He has taken me out of that stuff, and I praise Him for that. All right? And I need to work on keeping the leaven of the Pharisees, which is what? False teachings. depending on whether they have a cross around their neck or a Star of David. Okay, whichever way that Pharisee comes that teaches the commandments of men that nullify the traditions of men which nullify the commands of Elohim, I need to get that out of my life. I also need to make sure that I work on getting these bad attitudes, the attitudes of pride and strife and impatience and irritation and hate and all these things out of my heart, so they don't leaven my being and my family and my brethren, and just who knows where it stops. I mean, and that's why this was an important message for unleavened bread, because we see so much of this going on, and you can watch the leaven at work. Amen? You can watch it at work. Let's therefore then strive to be not like those braying asses, because it really doesn't matter which is right. It's important that we follow the Lamb and be righteous. Amen? All right? And I believe that if we'll do that, everything else will take care of itself. Yevrakeka Yahweh va'ish mareka ya'er Yahweh panavaleka vikoneka yasa Yahweh panavaleka v'yasim lakas shalom. Yahweh bless you and guard you. Yahweh make His face to shine upon you and show favor to you. Yahweh lift up His face upon you and give you His complete contentment.